Hey, everyone.
Hello.
How
Here we
are
are.
we doing today? Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
Awesome. I am doing good. I'm about to take off for Florida tomorrow.
Oh,
I'm going to be running sound for my brother's Easter service, which is
okay.
a
Yep, that's coming up.
multi-church event that's taking place at Mahaffey Theater, and they're going to have like have the people inside, and then outside they're going to have a line arrays and a broadcast mix going to the outdoors. So it's going to
Wow,
be insane.
that's gonna be a good setup.
Yeah. I had to actually pull
Sounds
my
like a
dad in for this one.
okay,
Like the-
right. A1, A2.
yes, exactly.
Dad, come help.
Yeah. Yeah. It should be fun. What are you guys doing for Easter?
Fun. We are going to travel out a little ways and visit my grandparents, whom
Aw.
we have not seen since before lockdown a year ago, and they have not seen anybody.
Yeah. Now, this has been the case for a lot of people. So
It
that's
should
pretty
be
exciting.
should be really special. Yeah, they're really excited to see
Yeah.
us and the kids and make a little weekend of it. So
Yeah. Aw.
pretty cool. Yeah,
Awesome. Sweet reunion.
sweet reunion indeed.
Yeah. Yeah. So we
So
got a fun topic
we
today.
do got a fun topic. Let me go ahead and run through some introductions. Oh, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm getting backstage notes here, but my mic needs to be turned up. How about that?
Oh yeah, rock and
Sounding
roll.
good? There we go. All right. Cool. So yeah, my name is Jason Fernandez. I am the live sound training specialist here at QSC, and joining me is Golden Preciado. She is a live sound and recording mix engineer extraordinaire, and she is our House of Worship consultant here at QSC. She manages an awesome Facebook group that we'll talk about a little bit later, and does a whole bunch of really cool stuff with us. And we're here to talk about some mixing things, in particular, some in-ear monitoring tips and tricks. Now,
Yep.
I'm curious, in your gig coming up this weekend, you're gonna be getting any in-ear mixes going for that?
Yeah,
Probably.
yes, the bass player
Uh-huh.
and the drummer will be on in-ear mixes. Everyone else will be on wedges.
Perfect.
These days you find a combination of wedges and in-ears going. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
very true. Yeah, usually it's rare to get it kind of across the board one way or another is what
yeah,
I'm finding.
yeah,
Either you got a couple in-ears, a couple wedges going on. It's very rare you get like everyone on in-ears or no one on
yeah,
in-ears. So you're
yeah,
usually at least running a one or two in-ear mixes in any given
yeah.
mix.
Those cases where I get an entire band on in-ears are those ones that are using tracks, and they
Ah,
have a click and a track.
yep.
And in the world of House of Worship, there's companies that produce tracks for them that actually call ahead with the lyrics and
Oh, that's
all. It's
cool.
just yeah. So in those cases, the entire band will be using in-ear monitors. Yeah.
Yep. Gotta do it. I actually was in a situation like that a couple of years ago where we had where everyone was on a click and we had backing tracks and we had a cue track as well, along
Yes.
with the backing track that was basically like feeding us the
Yeah.
sections of the song as the song went around. So
Now
there's
that is
no
what I do
possible
for
way you can
myself.
crash and
Yeah,
burn.
exactly.
It's
I
pretty
don't
great
get
actually.
to play a lot. I don't get to play a lot, but when I do, um, I use cue tracks to make it look like I know all these songs like the back of my hand. It totally
Yep.
allows me to get
It
out there and
totally
perform.
It's a great effect. I mean, the audience has no idea that
Yeah,
somebody's literally like talking in your ear, like, here's the chorus,
yeah,
3, 2, go. Like,
yeah. I am shouting
great.
commands at myself.
Mhm.
I got the words pumping in, or at least
Yep.
cues to each phrase coming in at me.
So good.
Yeah, and it works great, and nobody knows. Except
Yeah.
now, anybody listening to this knows. So,
So
oh
there
my
you go.
gosh.
Tip number 1, use cue tracks.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty cool thing, especially for those who don't get out and play enough to have all those words memorized.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so this one is going to be sort of like last week, where it's going to be a little bit more of a discussion. I do
Yes.
have my mixer set up here again, so we will kind of walk through a few steps when we really get into it. But we're really just kind of open it up and discuss and talk about a few tips and tricks when you are dealing with in-ear monitors.
Yes.
So Golden, I'll let you go ahead and kind of just
Yep.
take it from here,
All
and
righty.
I'll chime in as we go.
Very cool. So if you're a musician, we want you to jot down in the comments things that you struggle with in-ear monitors, and then we'll see if we can answer them and basically, let your comments be part of the discussion. So go ahead and do that when you get a chance. And in the
Yes.
meantime, I have a little background on how in-ear monitors kind of got started on a big stage at first.
Aha.
Yeah. The idea for custom fitted in-ear monitors is actually credited to monitor engineer Jerry Harvey is his name, and drummer Alex Van Halen. Yes, that is Eddie's brother, Alex Van Halen.
Hey.
And on a 1995 Van Halen tour, Alex was having trouble hearing the other band members over the overwhelming stage noise. And
Odd.
when he voiced,
Wouldn't have thought Van Halen would have had a lot of stage noise. Strange.
No. And when he voiced his frustration to his band's monitor engineer, Harvey began tinkering around and coming up with a solution. He installed tiny speakers, and believe it or not, this was in the article. It was actually designed originally for pacemakers into earpieces that were molded from impressions of Alex Van Halen's ears.
Wow.
And yeah, voila. Alex
how curious.
Had the first ever pair of custom in-ear monitors. And he says the difference in his words were it was like night and day. And from then on,
it's a pretty big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I was using in-ear monitors with cheap earphones before in-ear monitors were a thing, just because I wanted to maintain consistency wherever I went. And my husband and I were traveling around to various houses of worship, and nothing was ever consistent. So I kind of put together a in-ear monitor system for my husband and I, and it worked great.
It works great.
Then
Yeah.
It started becoming a thing, and we could buy better in-ear monitors, more drivers, and better earpieces, and so on. But really quick, I know we have struggles out there, but I wanted to list some of the pros, the good things about using in-ear monitors.
They are
number one, it totally cleans up the house mix.
Yes.
There's so little stage noise, and like no wall reflections. It totally cleans it up.
Yep.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. If anybody was tuned into our topic last week, that was kind of a big part of it. We were talking about monitors in general last week, not specifically IEMs, but one of our tips was, where you can reduce as much stage noise as possible. It really, really helps to clean up the front mix. And in-ears is a wonderful solution for that, hands down, because you virtually have no stage noise at that point, other than any amplifiers or the acoustic drums that are on stage. That is if everybody's on the in-ears. But even if you have a few players, if you remove those couple wedges off the stage, it helps tremendously. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in houses of worship, we tend to run the volume overall a lot lower than a regular concert, because our audience just has such a wide age range. So in-ear monitors makes it so that we can lower the volume, but still keep presence and clarity in the front of house mix. So a cool benefit there.
Right.
Another great benefit for the performer is that it offers consistency, precision, and dependability. And I forgot to add mobility. Wherever the performer moves around, the mix never changes.
Right. So if you're a singer or a guitar or bass player that you want to move around the stage, you move away from your stage wedge, and the sound profile changes depending on where you are. So you to get your optimum mix in your stereo, in your wedge, you got to kind of just be standing right in front of it the whole time. You know,
And
you
your
put their
reference
ears
totally
in.
changes if you're doing wedges.
That's right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you complete freedom and mobility. Personally, I'm a drummer, so I don't have the mobility to roam around stage yet. I'm looking at you, scientists. Come on, robotics. Um, but I, you know, personally, I prefer in-ears because I can tailor my mix to exactly what I want, and I know that it's cutting down on this on the stage noise. I don't have to have a loud wedge kind of blasting at me next to me on the kit. And it just gives me a nice, clean, clear sound that I can run at actually a slightly lower volume than you would need oftentimes with a big loud wedge on stage next to you to try to compensate and make up for the sound of the kit for one, and then all the other stage noise that's around you. You know, on louder stage performances and things like that. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So Thomas listed one of his biggest issues is that people buying cheap in-ear monitors, it makes it very difficult to get a good sound out of
That
it.
can be an issue, and if you are going to, you know, I got some people are on a budget, which is it's great because nowadays you can find somewhat of a range of decent IMs that kind of run for less expensive all the way to, you know, really expensive, but you can get a decent pair for about $150. Which is still not entirely cheap, but if you kind of weigh the cost to time ratio there, if you know you get a good pair or a decent pair once, you kind of eat that initial cost, and those are your in-ears, and if you take care of them, they're going to last you years, and you always have them, and they're always going to give you that nice sound. Now, with that said, I will also share something that I did when I was younger, when I was playing just out of high school, and when I first kind of was in college playing in LA in a bunch of really loud clubs. I devised something for myself where I took a pair of those old like Sony Discman headphones that had like that headband thing that would kind of just go over your head, and they had the two little
Great idea.
nodes that would go into your ears, right? I took those, and then I added a pair of those sound isolation protection headphones. So like when you go to like the gun range or something, you know, and I would put those over my cheap Sony headphones, and so I got the cancellation, and it made the cheap Sony headphones work a lot better. Now,
great idea.
I'm a drummer, and I didn't have any money, and so I just kind of figured that out, and it worked for me for a couple of years, and I really enjoyed it. So that might be something out there. You could explore something like that, but
that's a great idea.
It helps
using your applicable resources.
Absolutely.
Jake Wright mentioned that frequency conditions aren't always good when you have a lot of people using wireless in ears. And that is true. Now, one thing I can say, because I have quite a few people, when I mix at Campus Jacks, we're right across the street from the airport.
Oh.
And it is possible that we can get interference from there, but I have found much of my interference comes from our routers. The router that's connected to my mixer and the router that's our cameras are connected to, because our cameras are all Wi-Fi based. So I found that if I can get them about 20 to 30 feet away from the routers, there was a whole lot fewer dropouts. Otherwise, you'll want to rescan for a new frequency, which is possible. And I know there's a lot going on in Newport Beach, but you'll want to rescan for a new frequency until you find one. Shure makes excellent software for finding those frequencies. It's super easy to use. They have great online tutorials for that. If you're using wireless in-ear and moving from location to location, I would suggest getting that software.
It's really nice, and it is really easy to use. You can, it's
very easy.
It quickly scans. You know, it'll tell you if the frequency you're on is compromised in any way. And it'll rescan for you, and it just spit out a new frequency, and you just dial it in, and you're good to go. So
yeah, it sounds like Lufonic Sound has had the same issue with routers. So we totally get that.
Happens. You know, interference is a real thing. Wi-Fi interference, radio interference, it's all out there, and it is something that you have to combat sometimes.
Now, some of the biggest complaints I've heard with in-ear monitors is number one, no room ambience when they're cut off from the room, because they have full seal with their in-ears. They can't hear the room. The other thing is the feeling of separation from the audience, from the seal in your ears. And the way I deal with that, or the way that can be dealt with, is to put two microphones on either side of the stage facing out towards the audience, and you can actually mix those room mics or those ambient mics back into your mix to help add the ambience back into your mix. But the beautiful thing is, since you're sealed, you can add exactly what you need so that you don't lose control of your reference.
Right.
And still get the feeling of the room.
Yeah. You
So
still
that's
have,
one way
you
that
have
I
that
deal with
sense of
that.
the audience and the crowd in there, but it's just the right balance for what you need. And you know, if the event you're doing is doing any kind of live streaming, you probably already have those ambient mics set up for that purpose anyway.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, just get those microphones into your in-ear mix, and it's great.
Yeah. Beautiful thing. And then the other thing that I hear tons of complaints on is that they can't feel the bass. And that is something that can be fixed artificially. But when it comes to feeling bass, that comes from air being moved by those woofers.
The
and
woofers.
that cannot be replaced naturally unless there was speakers up there producing all sorts of noise. But they do have butt kickers out there. I mean, they do have things.
It's a workaround. You know, if you really need that visceral, you know, those vibrations, you know, up on the stage with you, you can get that artificially. But that's something. Honestly, that's something that I've kind of just learned to deal without. And you know, eventually you do it. You don't have to. You get used to the in-ears and the lack of vibration, and you kind of your body internally adjusts to that not being there, and you can still kind of you get the energy of the stage in other ways at that point. So I say just
Tony has a great idea, and I thought this was pretty epic. He uses the talkback mic for ambient noise. Yeah, so you can assign the talkback mic just to those in your monitor mixes, and they can have a very easy some ambience
that's
there.
Super simple. You just leave the talkback mic open.
Tony, that's awesome.
Hey, here's your audience sound.
Yeah, very cool.
Tony. All right.
So really quick, I want to talk about the best way to set up your ear mixes, and then what's actually probably happening mostly in the real world. We're going to start by talking about setting up stereo ear mixes. And really quick, I want to give a few pros for the stereo in-ear mix. The idea with an in-ear mix is to be able to hear everything as naturally as possible, as your two ears would hear it. And the stereo mix will allow you to do that. It'll help you to create a more natural listening environment, but you do have to create it.
You do.
So we do that by using panning. And for example, you're the drummer. So Jason, why don't you talk about how you would pan your drums in your ear mix?
If you think about, imagine like sitting behind a drum set, and imagine where things are physically laid out on stage around you. Starting with the drums, your snare drum is kind of in your lap. So that could be kick and snare, could be more or less center. The kick, definitely you'd want center. The snare drum, depending on how you want to feel it, you could pan slightly to the left if you're a right-handed drummer. But then you're going to have your hi-hat, which is going to be off to the left a little farther. Your cymbals are going to be spaced either farther out to either side of you, and then you have your rack toms, which are going to be located in different places in space as they move down in size, right? You know, these are all, you have to think about it physically. You know, where is this stuff located in space? Your drum set is not all laid out in front of you in center, right? All of your drums aren't stacked in front of you. You can't play a drum set that way.
Right,
and if you extrapolate that out, you know, you've got your bass player is probably on the outside of your hi-hat. Maybe the rhythm guitar players on the other side of you, just outside of your floor tom. You might have a second guitar player. There's a keyboardist that's somewhere out there, possibly. Maybe you got a vocal section, a horn section. You got your singers that are kind of out in front of you and can run around. And again, if you think about it physically, you know, you're not all in line on stage, right? You're not all in one straight line. You're spread out in space.
Yes.
So you want to try and recreate that as naturally as possible in your stereo mix, which is what Golden's talking about, which is what the advantage of is to having the ability to create a stereo mix for your ears.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, just laying out the drum set, kind of nudge your hi-hat out to the left a little bit. Maybe your first rack tom is just inside of the hi-hat, and your second rack tom is next to that one. Your floor tom is out to the right a little farther, and then you got your overheads that are spread out even farther than that, both to your left and right. And then
just
go
to
from
note,
there.
you won't want to hard pan hard
No,
pan
definitely
things,
not.
'cause that's not how your ears would hear naturally. Even if something was farther away from you, you would still have some volume in the other ear. So try not to hard pan left, right, but just pan where it would be in relation to you. And then if you're off center, you can pan stuff where you're hearing great delineation of the instruments.
Mhm.
So Emmanuel writes, can a stereo mix be sent to all instruments? So Jason is going to get out because
Let's
he has the
talk
camera.
about that. Put
Let's
myself back
show
in
them
the
how
camera.
to create a stereo mix.
Let's do it. So
on-
I'll go ahead and I'll drive
Just
my
figure it
mixer
out.
over here, and why don't you take us through the steps, Golden, and I'll follow you.
Let's make 1 and 2
Okay.
be a stereo set of in-ear monitors.
All right. So I'm going to select my aux1, and what we're going to do is link aux1 and aux2 to create our stereo option, right?
So
What are
go
we
ahead
gonna
and
do?
click in the gray area there above the master fader.
There we are. Okay,
Then go to
now we're
setup
here.
where he is.
I'm already
Then
on the
right
setup
there,
tab
you'll see the link button, which is by the title.
right here.
Click that.
I'm going to hit that, and I'm going to confirm. And now my link button is blue. I also have this little chain link icon there. And if you look over here, 1 and 2 are now one big button. The buttons got combined over there. So now that I don't have an individual 1 and aux2 button, it is one solid button. And
Yes.
that is now my stereo mix. So if I press
Now
home,
it is important. Go back to that setup page for
You
1
got it,
second
yep.
there. It is important, and the mixer defaults to this, that it is set in pre-fader.
Yep.
Because you don't want the people with ears to be hearing
No.
changes that the front of house person is
Yeah,
making.
no, that's bad. So just double check that. Like she said, it will default to this setting, but just while you're here, just check that and make sure that's set to pre-fader.
Yeah. So, Jason, what I'm going to have you do is just quickly demonstrate pulling up the faders in that in-ear mix,
You got it?
And
So we'll add a little
panning stuff to its position. The hi-hat could be panned.
get some level here. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
arbitrarily pull some levels up. We want to focus on our panning now. So what do you want us to do here?
Let's
Kick
pan
drum, probably
the
center.
hi-hat.
Yep.
Hi-hat just slightly or to the left, because it'd be from the drummer's position.
Right. If we're talking about the drummer, you want it to
Yeah.
be natural to you, so it's on your left. If you're looking at the audience, right, the audience is looking at the drum set from the front, so it's going to be inverted. So that's
Yeah.
another thing to keep in mind. Who is the mix for?
Yes.
But if
And
it's
then the
for
toms
you-
go ahead and put those in perspective based to where you're sitting.
Sure. So let's get
So do you guys see that little pan slider up there? That's
Yeah, this might be
that's
a
what
little
you're gonna be
hard to
using.
hopefully you can see all that.
It's kind of
there's my-
small, but yeah, you can.
My first tom and then my second tom will be out to the other side like that.
And definitely it's easier to adjust panning by doing the touch and turn method. You touch
That's
the
right.
pan, touch the green pan
Right.
button, and then
Touch my
use the
green. Now I've got my
wheel to turn it. Yeah.
wheel that's turning it right there.
So you can create a really amazing mix by panning stuff. Now the room mics, you'll want to have panned maybe 60% to the left and the right. And I know there's no room mics in this particular session, but if you had room mics, you would want to pan those 60% to the left and right or so.
Yep.
And then add those into your comfort level. Something that I have noted is when condenser mics are involved in the mix, if you add too much of the condenser mics, it starts hollowing out your mix and it makes it difficult to reference.
Interesting.
So yeah, you'll just want to be careful as you're adding condenser mics where that threshold is. And it's up to you, the person who's referencing it.
Right.
But you'll notice as you add those condenser mics that if you add too much, it kind of hollows out the mix and takes away from your main reference.
Good to know. Yeah.
For vocalists, you'll want your whatever you're referencing right up the center.
Yep.
If you're playing bass, up the center. Bass should be up the center anyway.
Sure.
But Yeah.
Our bass there. We got another screen. This particular mix has two bass inputs. We've got a direct and an amp on stage. We'll keep those both in the center.
So now that we've created this one mix, go ahead and finish creating a start mix, Jason.
Sure. So allow 2 seconds here. We'll just pull some levels on everything real quick. And so we want vocals in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe pan the guitars a little bit.
Yep.
Maybe the pianos. Might be fun to pan those guys. Cool. Okay.
Person doing monitors can actually start by creating a start mix like Jason just did. And then the copy and paste button will copy whatever page you're on. So when he presses the copy button and all the faders are showing, you're copying all 24 or 32 faders and they can be pasted into another auxiliary send. So let's pretend that we have another set of stereo in-ears, even though they're mono, but we'll go to the next mix and then press the paste button.
Yep. Paste.
And you'll see that start mix is already in place for the next user of in-ears. And then they can adjust the mix by themselves. And really quick, Jason, if you could just show them how to give access to people with their iPhones. Now, what you want to do is make sure that your device, your iPhone, whatever or you're using, is connected to the same router that the mixer is connected to. So you'll have to download the QSC app on your device and then ask the engineer what the code is, and they'll give it to you.
Which you'll find, if you're the engineer, you'll find that here. So that's in the network section of your menu. Yes. That information is listed here.
Then once you're on the same Wi-Fi as the mixer, you'll go to the remote control. Actually, the engineer will go to the remote control button. And you can't access this from an iPad like you can everything else. Remote control can only be given from the mixer itself. Right. So once you open up the app, you'll notice that your device tells you, well, you're connected to the mixer, but you haven't been given permission yet. So the next thing to do would be for the engineer to click your device, which would show up in the device list right here.
Right here. So I got one in there.
And then he's going to give you permission for whichever mix is yours. So, now, front of house person is going to use full access because they need full access. But let's unclick full access and bring it. And what you're going to do is unselect, or the engineer will unselect everything that is not the mix that we are giving to that person, because they only want to make changes to their own mix. And then you would press save, and the device or the phone or whatever would say, all right, all access is granted. And then you can go for it and mix yourself in.
That's right.
I have various bands that I do this with at Campus Jacks. I would say more often than not these days, bands are coming in with half of the people using wireless in-ears and half the people using wedges. So I go ahead and grant access to those people using in-ears, and they can mix themselves in.
Yeah, it's a great option for both the performer and the engineer, because the performer gets to do whatever they want, and the engineer doesn't have to worry about them. That's one less thing that they're dealing with.
Those repeat bands that come back, I don't even have to deal with them because I saved the scene. So
it's already good to go. They fire their phone up, and once you've been connected and granted access the first time, every time that device is connected again to the mixer, it will remember those settings. And so those repeat bands are coming in and they're good to go instantly.
Yes. Now, last week we talked about in wedges, it's not good to add effects because it throws off the pitch of the singer, especially with vocals.
Yeah.
In-ear, sealed in-ear mixed is a little bit different because you're not dealing with wall reflections and timing issues of things bouncing off and coming back at you in a delayed time. So it's okay when you have sealed in-ears to add effects. So really quick, Jason, go over to the effects in this ear mix that you're on right now.
Let's do it. So I've navigated to the effects masters bank here with all of our.
And you can push. You can push whatever effects you want to hear in your in-ear mix.
All right. Well, I think we should probably get the vocal reverb going.
Yeah, vocal reverb. Hey.
Yeah, that's that -10. That's pretty good. And yeah, if it were me, I might want a little my snare drum reverb going.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of cool.
So you can add effects into your mix and add the sauce. Yeah,
That's it.
that's what it is, the sauce.
Yep.
Now, this remote control that we just gave to the musicians on stage, I would never grant that to anybody running a wedge. I only grant remote control
No.
to musicians using in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
So
Good. I'm glad you
just a quick
clarified
FYI there.
that. Yeah.
They will send it into feedback and you will have to, it'll be a nightmare.
It'll be problems.
Yeah. Really quick, I want to talk about mono in-ear mixes, because stereo in-ear mixes, since you're using 2 auxiliary channels, you could only get 7 stereo in-ear mixes on a touch mix because there's 15 outputs. And
I was going to point that out. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you have a TouchMix 30 Pro here, you know, you can see once you combine 2, you know, they become essentially one mix that you're utilizing 2 physical outputs for. So you can have up to 7 of those on the mix.
Yeah.
But
7 stereo
again,
mixes.
if you find yourself running out of outputs, you can kind of switch back over to a mono send instead. So
now I'm going to talk about really quick some of the disadvantages of the mono in-ear send.
Okay.
And that is that they're not natural. It's just not natural to hear a big wall of sound up the center. And most people who complain about in-ears being so bad have only experimented with the mono in-ear send.
That makes sense.
And they're trying to mix a record in their ears, but you can't mix a record and hear naturally like you can with a stereo mix when everything is going up the center in a big wall of sound. It can really skew your reference. So the thing to note, if you're mixing a mono mix, is put what you need for reference only. You can't mix a record in your ears.
No. Yeah, you minimize the number of channels that you're using in that mix to just only the bare bones of what you need to perform and stay locked in with the other musicians.
Yeah. So if a vocalist is creating their in-ear mix, they may have their vocal mixed up the center. They'll choose the instrument that has the most chordal properties to it, probably keys or guitar. And then they need to choose something in the drum section for their rhythm. A lot of times that'll be the hi-hat or just a smidgen of kick. You'll find that vocalists can't add too much drums into their ears because they're already hearing and feeling the kit acoustically. So
it's behind them on stage.
Yeah.
Delivering all of that directly into them physically. So but a little hi-hat in the ear can just kind of help you stay locked in there with the rhythm.
And that is the main thing to note about the mono in-ear mix. The pros of the mono in-ear mix is that you can fit 14 of them on there if you wanted.
Yep, that's it. You got a lot.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention about the mono in-ear mix, and a lot of musicians do this and it's very dangerous, is they pull one ear out of their ear so they can hear room, and then they have the mix going the other. What happens is that the user turns their mix up in their ears 6 to 10 dB louder than what they're used to hearing or what their threshold would be if both ears were in, just so they can hear their own reference in addition to the room ambience. And hearing damage is a real thing. So I have to say, don't do this.
Yeah.
Just stay away from it. I have done that before I knew any better. And I had tinnitus for the next several hours where like I had the ringing in my ear. So, and every little event that you have with tinnitus, there is some hearing damage. So don't pull one ear out, no matter what you do. One other thing, I'm almost done.
No, go ahead. This is good stuff. This is good information.
One other thing I wanted to mention is you got to give yourself time to get used to in-ear monitors. They're super helpful and they really help the front of house mix. And as an engineer, I want to make the best presentation of the house mix I can, which is something that can be done with in-ear monitors, even in a small space where there's wall reflections.
Mhm.
But it does take some getting used to
It does.
for the performer. So you
Yep.
have to give yourself time and realize
There's
this
an
is
adjustment
benefit.
period.
This
Yeah.
is for the benefit of the audience. I'm willing to give up a little bit of what I want to feel and what I want to experience so the audience can experience the full benefit of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was the main thing.
Very good.
And unless you have something else awesome to share, Jason, I think that was it.
I don't. I think like that was all really great information. I think we got through it. Those were kind of so that's sort of the main benefits and pitfalls of using IEMs and kind of how to get around the pitfalls. I think we outlined fairly well.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, get out there and get your in-ears going and use that stereo mix when you can.
You know, I have to tell you, for a vocalist, using in-ears will save your voice for years to come.
Sure.
Vocalists sing so much harder, and they get raspy by the end of a performance because they're pushing. And why do I know this? Because I grew up on wedges, and this was always my problem.
Mhm.
And when I switched to in-ear monitors, especially sealed in-ear monitors, I was able to relax and really go for the vocal tone that I wanted and
Nice.
the licks and tricks that I wanted. It made it
Nice.
so much easier.
Yeah, you get more comfortable. I can say the same thing as a drummer. When I switched to in-ears, I noticed, when I got exactly what I wanted in my mix, I didn't have to play as hard, and I wasn't expending as much energy as I normally would be. Just
Right.
just trying to get the sounds that I wanted out of my drums because I had it in my ears. It was just right there, and I could pace myself a lot better, and I could save my energy and then exert myself when it was needed instead of just playing full bore for an entire half hour, 40-minute set, and then you're dead at the end.
Right.
So yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
there are many benefits. I think we got through it. There was,
Yeah. Oh, the one thing I wanted to mention is that you don't have to be wireless. We can use a headphone
oh
amp.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
those are
I'm not wireless
totally,
when I use mine.
yeah, totally cost effective. I don't move around when I play, so I use a headphone amp, and then you don't have to deal with any wireless issues. It's a great idea.
Totally. Yeah. And if you're an immobile performer like a drummer or a
Mhm.
keyboardist, definitely go with that option. Because again, it cuts
Yeah.
back on your wireless transponders and
Yeah.
less interference potential. So yeah, great recommendation. I certainly do. I've got a little headphone amp that I have behind me on stage and just
What's your
connect
favorite?
I mean, my favorite would be I can't think of what they're called at the moment, actually. But the PreSonus actually has some fairly decent ones. I've used some
Yeah.
PreSonus ones the one that I have personally is not great. I got a Pile headphone app like 6 years ago. I bought it for like $15 on Amazon because I had no money at the time, and I just it works. So I just haven't gotten a new
Yeah.
one. But
Whatever works. My
yeah,
favorite is the P1 made by Behringer. It
sure.
has the option for
I've-
stereo.
I have used that one as well.
and
That's
mono.
a fine one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Very good. Do you want to take us out, Jason?
Let's wrap it up. Yeah. Thanks for that discussion, Golden. Some great
Oh, you're
information in there. Before we sign off here, I do want to mention a couple of our Facebook groups that if you are not already a part of, I highly recommend you check it out. One of them is the TouchMix user group on Facebook. It's a large group at the moment, and it is still growing. It's a wonderful community of both TouchMix users and interested TouchMix users, or just other people from kind of all walks of the audio mixing field. It's really nice. You got a lot of people that are willing to kind of answer questions and help you out. Myself and Golden are both admins, so we're involved too, as well as a couple of our AET staff members. So it gets monitored very well daily by members of QSC. But it is at this point a fully kind of self-governed user group full of great information and stories and tips and tricks and things like that. So check it out if you're not already in there.
I find users have some great application solutions.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can find some really creative stuff that you might not have thought of in there.
Yeah.
And then our other one is our you have to forgive me, I always forget the exact title of this, but it's
Church
I think
sound training.
Church Sound Training, yes, which it was created and moderated by Golden And it largely focuses on kind of general audio and mixing tips and tricks for kind of the average churchgoer and church volunteer audio mixer. But, if you're not a churchgoer, if you're not a volunteer at a church, I actually would still recommend you check it out, because the information that is being delivered in that group is general purpose audio knowledge. It's just sort of kind of being framed in more of a house of worship application. Yeah, but
it can be used anywhere.
It can be used anywhere on any stage in any live application. So those are two really nice, good groups that we have going on right now on Facebook. I highly recommend you check that out. And I think that's all we got.
Awesome.
A little longer this one, but that's okay. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're having a great Tuesday. I hope you have a great evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. And we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.